In November 1988, a 17-year-old high school student named Junko Furuta disappeared on her way home from work in Misato, Japan. What followed would become known as one of the most heinous crimes in Japanese history, and a catastrophic failure of the justice system that would haunt the nation for decades. Before we continue, I need to be clear. This case involves extreme violence and suffering. While I'll discuss the facts with the respect they deserve, this content may be disturbing. If you need to step away at any time, please do so. Resources for support will be in the description. Junko was described by everyone who knew her as a bright, kind young woman. She was an excellent student, working part-time to save money. She loved music, spent time with friends, and had dreams of her future. She was planning to graduate soon. She was someone's daughter, someone's friend, someone's classmate. She was a real person. And what happened to her and how the system responded reveals uncomfortable truths about justice, bystander complicity, and how society protects the vulnerable. This is her story. November 25, 1988, started as an ordinary Friday for Junko Furuta. After finishing her shift at a part-time job, she rode her bicycle toward home through the Misato neighborhood in Saitama Prefecture. It was around 8:30 p.m. The route was familiar. She'd traveled it countless times before, but on this night she was being watched. 4 teenage boys had noticed Junko previously and had planned her abduction. The leader was 18-year-old Hiroshi Miyano, who had connections to the Yakuza, Japanese organized crime. The others were 17-year-old Joe Ogura, 16-year-old Shinji Minato, and 17-year-old Yasushi Watanabe. Their plan was calculated and cruel. One of the boys pushed Junko off her bicycle. As she fell, another positioned himself as a helpful stranger, offering to walk her home safely. Frightened and hurt from the fall, Junko initially accepted what seemed like help. Instead, he led her to a nearby warehouse where the other perpetrators were waiting. Once there, the boys revealed their true intentions. Miyano threatened Junko, telling her he had connections to the Yakuza and that he knew where she lived, where her family lived. He said if she tried to escape or call for help, her family would be harmed. To prove his point, he forced her to call her parents and tell them she had run away and was staying with friends. Junko's parents, hearing their daughter's voice, believed the call was genuine. They filed a missing persons report, but told police that Junko had said she ran away. This would critically delay the investigation. The boys then took Junko to one of their homes, a 2-story house in the Ayase district of Tokyo's Adachi ward. This house belonged to the parents of Shinji Minato, and this is where Junko would be held captive for the next 44 days. What's particularly disturbing is how brazen these perpetrators were. They didn't take Junko to an abandoned building or a remote location. They held her in a residential home in a regular neighborhood where Minato's parents lived on a different floor. The abduction was just the beginning of a nightmare that should have been impossible in a populated area of one of the world's largest cities. What Junko endured over the next 44 days represents some of the worst acts human beings can inflict on another person. I will discuss the nature of what happened to her, but I will not provide graphic details. Her suffering was real, and it deserves acknowledgement without sensationalism. Junko was held in a second-floor bedroom of the Minato residence. She was subjected to continuous physical and psychological abuse by the 4 main perpetrators, as well as numerous other teenage boys who were brought to the house. The abuse was systematic and sadistic. She was beaten repeatedly. She was burned. She was denied food, water, and sleep for extended periods. The perpetrators used her as an object for their entertainment, forcing her to endure humiliations that stripped away her dignity piece by piece. Estimates suggest that over the 44 days, more than 100 different perpetrators participated in or witnessed the abuse. Some came once, some returned multiple times. Teenagers from the neighborhood treated the situation like a gathering place, knowing what was happening and participating nonetheless. Junko was kept in such a state that escape became physically impossible. Her injuries accumulated: broken bones, burns, internal damage. The boys forced her to sleep on a balcony in the winter cold. They gave her cockroaches to eat. They set fireworks off inside her body. Despite everything, Junko tried to resist. She attempted to call the police on one occasion, but was caught and punished even more severely. She tried to escape through a window, but was unable to move properly due to her injuries. Each act of resistance was met with escalated violence. The psychological torture was equally calculated. The boys destroyed any hope she had. They made her believe her family would be killed if she didn't comply. They forced her to participate in her own dehumanization, making her feel complicit in what was happening to her. By January 1989, Junko's physical condition had deteriorated catastrophically. She had lost control of bodily functions. Her face was so swollen and damaged that she was barely recognizable. Her legs were so badly injured, she could no longer walk or even stand. On January 4, 1989, after 44 days of captivity, the perpetrators grew concerned that Junko might die, which would bring police attention they wanted to avoid. In a final act of brutality, they subjected her to even more extreme violence in a session that lasted approximately 2 hours. Junko Furuta died that day. She was 17 years old. The boys wrapped her body in a drum filled with concrete and disposed of it in a tract of reclaimed land in Koto, Tokyo. Then they went about their lives as if nothing had happened. One of the most disturbing aspects of Junko's case isn't just what the perpetrators did, it's what everyone else didn't do. For 44 days, Junko was held in a residential home in a populated Tokyo neighborhood. And during those 44 days, multiple people knew or suspected something terrible was happening, yet no one intervened. Let's start with the most shocking fact. Shinji Minato's parents lived in the same house where Junko was being held captive. The same house. They lived on a different floor. But they were present. They heard things. They saw the boys coming and going at odd hours. They saw the condition of the room. According to later testimony, they even saw Junko. Minato's parents later claimed they were afraid of their own son and his connections to the Yakuza through Miyano. They said they feared for their own safety. But for 44 days, they allowed a teenage girl to be tortured in their home without calling the police, without helping her, without doing anything. Their fear, whether legitimate or an excuse, was prioritized over Junko's life. But it wasn't just the parents. Neighbors in the surrounding homes reported hearing screaming. They heard sounds of violence. Some saw teenage boys constantly entering and leaving the Minato residence at all hours. The neighborhood wasn't soundproofed. These were typical Japanese residential homes with thin walls. Several neighbors later admitted they suspected something was wrong, but they didn't want to get involved. Some said they thought it was just a domestic dispute. Others said they didn't want to cause trouble or bring attention to the neighborhood. This phenomenon, the bystander effect, is well documented in psychology. The more people who witness something, the less likely any individual is to intervene, because they assume someone else will handle it. But in Junko's case, everyone assumed someone else would help. No one did. There's also a cultural context that's important to understand, though it doesn't excuse what happened. In 1980s Japan, there was a strong cultural emphasis on not interfering in others' affairs, particularly family matters. The concept of reading the air, understanding social situations and not causing discomfort, was deeply ingrained. Calling the police on a neighbor could be seen as extreme and socially disruptive. Additionally, the Yakuza connection created genuine fear. Miyano's association with organized crime wasn't just a threat, it was a reality that made people hesitant to get involved. The Yakuza in the 1980s had significant power and presence in Japanese society, and crossing them could have real consequences. But here's the uncomfortable question. At what point does fear become complicity? Perhaps most tragically, there were moments when intervention could have changed everything. On one occasion, Junko managed to reach a phone and call emergency services. She was able to say she'd been kidnapped before the boys caught her and ended the call. The police did trace the call to the Minato residence and came to investigate. This was the moment. This was when everything could have ended. The police knocked on the door. The perpetrators answered. The police asked if everything was okay. The boys said yes, it was just a prank call from a friend. The police looked around briefly, but they didn't search thoroughly. They didn't go upstairs. They didn't insist on speaking to everyone in the house. They left, and Junko's punishment for trying to get help was unspeakable. Over 100 people participated in or witnessed Junko's abuse. Minato's parents lived in the same house. Neighbors heard her screams. Police came to the door, and for 44 days, Junko Furuta remained in hell, surrounded by people who could have saved her, but didn't. The discovery of what happened to Junko Furuta came not through the diligent work of investigators searching for a missing girl, but through the carelessness and arrogance of her killers. In late January 1989, just weeks after Junko's death, Hiroshi Miyano and Joe Ogura were arrested for a completely separate crime. They had been involved in the gang rape of another young woman, and during the investigation of that assault, one of them began to talk. Whether it was guilt, bragging, or simply a miscalculation, details about what had happened to Junko Furuta began to emerge. On January 23, 1989, nearly 3 weeks after her death, police were led to a concrete-filled drum in a landfill in Koto, Tokyo. When they broke it open, they discovered Junko's remains. The autopsy revealed the extent of what she had endured. Her body told a story that was almost impossible to comprehend. The medical examiner found evidence of injuries that had occurred throughout the 44 days, old injuries that had begun to heal, newer injuries layered on top, and the catastrophic final injuries that had ended her life. The cause of death was listed as shock and traumatic brain injury, but that clinical language could never capture the full horror of what had been done to her. As police began their investigation, the scope of the crime became clear. This wasn't just 4 boys who had committed an impulsive act of violence. This was a prolonged, organized torture that had involved dozens of participants and had been witnessed by even more. When news of Junko's murder broke in the Japanese media, the nation was horrified. The details that emerged, carefully reported but devastating nonetheless, shocked a country that prided itself on safety and social order. This wasn't a crime that happened in a dark alley or a remote location. This was something that happened in a residential neighborhood, in a family home, with people all around who heard and saw and knew. Junko's parents, who had spent 44 days believing their daughter had run away, now had to confront the unbearable truth of what she had actually endured. The guilt they felt, even though they had done nothing wrong, was overwhelming. They had believed the phone call. They had trusted that Junko was safe. The investigation expanded rapidly. Police began identifying the more than 100 individuals who had participated in or witnessed the abuse. But this is where the first cracks in the justice system began to show. Because most of the perpetrators were minors, Japanese law protected their identities. Most of them were never charged. Those who were questioned gave statements but faced no consequences. The neighborhood boys who had treated Junko's captivity as a social gathering simply went back to their normal lives. Only the 4 main perpetrators, Miyano, Ogura, Minato, and Watanabe, would face trial. And even then, the Japanese legal system was about to fail Junko one final time. The trial of Junko Furuta's killers began in 1990, and from the very beginning, it was clear that justice would not be served. Because of their ages at the time of the crime, all 4 main perpetrators were tried as juveniles. In Japan's legal system, this meant their identities were protected, their sentences would be limited, and their criminal records could eventually be sealed. The prosecution presented overwhelming evidence. The confessions were detailed. The physical evidence was irrefutable. The medical examiner's testimony painted a clear picture of 44 days of systematic torture. This was not a crime where guilt was in question, but the sentences handed down stunned the nation and outraged the world. Hiroshi Miyano, the leader and the one with Yakuza connections, was sentenced to 17 years in prison. Joe Ogura received a sentence of 5 to 9 years. Shinji Minato, in whose home Junko was held, received a sentence of 5 to 7 years. Yasushi Watanabe received a sentence of 5 to 7 years. Let me put that in perspective. For 44 days of kidnapping, rape, torture, and murder of a 17-year-old girl, the harshest sentence was 17 years. The lightest was 5 years. Junko Furuta suffered for 44 days. Her killers would serve sentences that, in some cases, were barely longer than her captivity. The public reaction was immediate and furious. Protests erupted across Japan. Citizens gathered outside courthouses demanding harsher sentences. Victim advocacy groups called for reforms to the juvenile justice system. The case became a rallying point for those who believed that Japan's laws were too lenient, too focused on rehabilitation of perpetrators rather than justice for victims. But the sentences stood, and then something even more disturbing happened. As the perpetrators served their time and were eventually released, many of them reoffended. Hiroshi Miyano was released in 2009 after serving his full sentence. In 2013, he was arrested again for fraud. He had learned nothing. He felt no remorse. He simply continued living as a criminal. Joe Ogura was released in 1999 after serving 8 years. In 2004, he was arrested for assaulting a man whom he beat and then trapped in the trunk of a car. The victim survived, but Ogura had once again demonstrated his capacity for violence and cruelty. Shinji Minato and Yasushi Watanabe were both released in the late 1990s and early 2000s. While they haven't been publicly connected to major crimes since their release, their whereabouts and activities remain largely unknown due to Japan's privacy laws for former juvenile offenders. What about the others? The 100-plus individuals who participated in or witnessed Junko's torture. Most were never charged. Most faced no consequences whatsoever. Some of them are living normal lives today, jobs, families, integration into society, as if they never spent hours or days participating in or witnessing the torture of a teenage girl. And Minato's parents? The ones who lived in the same house for 44 days and did nothing? They were charged with harboring criminals and received probation. For allowing a girl to be tortured to death in their home. The failures didn't stop at the courtroom. Over the years, there have been multiple reported instances of vandalism at Junko's grave. Her name has been defaced. Offerings left by mourners have been destroyed. Some believe this vandalism was carried out by associates or family members of the perpetrators, though no one has been caught or charged. Even in death, Junko couldn't find peace. The case did spark some discussion about reforming Japan's juvenile justice system. There were calls to lower the age at which serious offenders could be tried as adults, to impose harsher sentences for violent crimes committed by minors, and to provide better protection for victims and their families. Some small changes were made, but the fundamental system remains largely the same. In 2000, Japan did lower the age for criminal responsibility from 16 to 14 in some cases, and created provisions for serious crimes to be transferred to adult court. But these reforms came too late for Junko, and critics argue they still don't go far enough. The perpetrators got to move on with their lives. Junko never got that chance. Junko Furuta's grave stands in a cemetery in Misato, Saitama, not far from where she was abducted on that November evening in 1988. Her gravestone is simple, and it's regularly visited by people who never knew her, but who want to honor her memory and acknowledge her suffering. On her grave, visitors leave flowers, stuffed animals, and letters. Some apologize on behalf of a society that failed her. Some express their anger at a justice system that valued the futures of teenage boys over the life of a teenage girl. Some simply want her to know that she's remembered, that her life mattered, that she wasn't forgotten. Because that's what this case ultimately represents, a question of whose life matters, whose suffering counts, and how we as a society respond when the worst happens. Junko Furuta was 17 years old. She was a good student. She worked hard. She had friends and family who loved her. She had dreams and plans and a future that should have been hers. And she died alone, in agony, in a house full of people who could have saved her, but chose not to. Her case forces us to confront uncomfortable truths. It forces us to ask, what do we owe each other as human beings? At what point does our fear of getting involved become moral cowardice? How do we balance rehabilitation with accountability? When does mercy for perpetrators become cruelty to victims? These aren't easy questions, and they don't have simple answers. But what happened to Junko Furuta demands that we ask them. The 4 main perpetrators of this crime are all free today. Most of them have been free for years. They get to wake up every morning, eat meals, see the sky, feel the sun, experience things that Junko will never experience. The justice system decided that their youth, their potential for rehabilitation, their futures, mattered more than what they had done. The system decided that 44 days of torture, that a life stolen at 17, was worth at most 17 years in prison, and in most cases much less. You can decide for yourself whether that's justice. Junko's legacy lives on not in the legal reforms that barely happened, but in the people who refuse to forget her. In Japan and around the world, her case is taught as an example of systematic failure. Failure of individuals, failure of community, failure of institutions, failure of justice. Student advocacy groups discuss her case when talking about bystander intervention. Legal scholars reference her case when debating juvenile justice reform. Human rights organizations cite her case when calling for better protection of victims. And every year, on the anniversary of her death, people gather at her grave to remember a girl who deserved so much better than what she got. If you take anything from Junko's story, let it be this: intervene. When you see something wrong, say something. When you hear someone in distress, help them. Don't assume someone else will take care of it. Don't let fear of inconvenience or social awkwardness stop you from doing what's right. Because somewhere, someone is counting on you to be braver than the people who failed Junko. And remember that every victim has a name, a story, a life that mattered. Junko Furuta was not just a case number or a statistic or a cautionary tale. She was a person, and she deserved justice. If you or someone you know is experiencing abuse or violence, please reach out for help. Resources are available in the description below. You are not alone, and there are people who will believe you and support you. Thank you for watching and for remembering Junko with the dignity and respect she deserved. Rest in peace, Junko Furuta.